The stay at Sinai was a time of turning a crowd into a kingdom. Under the shadow of the mountain, the Tabernacle was built, a house of color and gold where the Creator chose to dwell among his people. Aaron and his sons were set apart. They wore garments of beauty and glory, representing the people before God, making sure the fire of the altar never went out. After a year at the mountain, the pillar of cloud lifted. It was time to move. They marched toward the land promised to their ancestors, carrying the presence of God in their midst. At the border of the land, Moses chose 12 leaders, one from each tribe. Their mission was to see the land, the people, and the cities. They were the eyes of the nation. It was a land of abundance. The fruit was so large it took 2 men to carry a single cluster. It was everything God had promised, a land flowing with milk and honey. But the spies also saw the giants. To 10 of them, the fruit wasn't worth the fight. They saw the walls and the warriors, and they felt like grasshoppers in their own eyes. The bad report spread like a plague. Fear replaced the memories of the Red Sea. The people forgot the God who kills giants and only saw the giants who kill men. Joshua and Caleb stood alone. "The land is exceedingly good," they cried. They tried to remind the people that with God, the giants were nothing. But the crowd was already reaching for stones. God intervened. His glory appeared, stopping the rebellion in its tracks. But the consequence was heavy. Because they refused to trust the God who had carried them, they would not enter the rest he had prepared. The sentence was passed. For every day the spies were in the land, the people would wander for a year. 40 years of wandering began, waiting for a new generation to rise with the courage to believe. The desert was not just a place of punishment, it was a sanctuary of preparation. At the heart of the camp stood the Tabernacle, a portable palace where the people learned that God lived right in the middle of their struggle. A new generation was growing up. They were children of the sand who had never known the whip of Egypt. Around evening fires, the elders told them of miracles, weaving wonder into the fabric of their young hearts. They learned the language of sacrifice. They understood that their mistakes had a cost, but that God had provided a way to be clean. Every ritual was a lesson in holiness, preparing them for their inheritance. But peace in the desert was fragile. Korah, a leader among the Levites, grew hungry for power. He looked at Moses and Aaron as obstacles to his ambition and began planting seeds of a dangerous new rebellion. Moses did not fight for his title. He fell on his face and let God be the judge. He challenged Korah to a test of incense, a divine trial to see who was truly chosen to stand in the holy place. The judgment was swift and terrifying. The ground beneath the rebels opened its mouth and swallowed them whole. It was a sobering reminder that the desert was a school of discipline, and the teacher was not to be mocked. To end the grumbling, God gave a sign of life. Aaron's staff, a piece of dead wood, blossomed overnight with flowers and fruit. True leadership was shown to be a source of life, not a grasp for power. These were the years of the hidden harvest. While the bodies of the old generation fell in the sand, Moses was pouring his wisdom into Joshua. He was raising a leader who would be strong and courageous. They became a people of beauty, even in the barrenness. The skills learned in Egypt were now used to honor their own king. Every thread was a statement. They were no longer slaves, but artisans of the Almighty. Miriam, the sister who watched over Moses in the Nile and led the dance at the sea, was the first of the 3 to go. Her song ended in the sand, but its echoes stayed in the hearts of the camp. Moses reached out to the king of Edom, asking only for passage. "We will stay on the main road," he promised. But the answer was a wall of spears, forcing the nation to take the long, hard way around. The detour was exhausting, and the people's patience finally snapped. The new generation sounded just like the old. The desert had changed their clothes, but it had not yet changed their stubborn hearts. Moses fled to the only place of safety, the presence of God. The Lord told him to take the staff and speak to the rock, promising that water would pour out for the thirsty assembly. But the weight of 40 years finally broke him. Moses didn't speak to the rock. He spoke against the people in human fury. He acted as if the miracle belonged to his hands rather than God's. He raised his arm and struck the rock twice. He disobeyed the whisper of God to satisfy the roar of his own heart. He brought water to the thirsty, but he failed to honor the Holy One. Water gushed out in abundance. The Lord was faithful even when his servant was not. The people were saved from their thirst, but a heavy silence fell over the spirit of Moses. The cost of his anger was his dream. The man who had walked through fire would see the promised land from a distance, but his feet would never touch its soil. The shepherd would not enter the fold. The time came for Aaron to go to his rest. On Mount Hor, the brothers shared one last journey together. Moses stripped his brother of his sacred garments, passing the mantle of priesthood to the next generation. Aaron died there on top of the mountain. Moses stood alone now, the last of the 3 siblings who had led the Exodus. He was the shepherd of a new generation, preparing them for a home he would never share. The journey was long, and the souls of the people became thin. They spoke against God once more. In response, the protection of the desert was lifted, and fiery serpents came among them. The bite was lethal, but the sting of regret was deeper. The people confessed their sin and begged for mercy. "Pray to the Lord," they cried. Once again, Moses stood between the people and the judgment. God provided a strange remedy. He did not remove the snakes. He provided a way to live despite their bite. Moses was commanded to make a serpent of bronze and set it on a pole for all to see. It was a test of faith. Anyone who was bitten could look at the bronze serpent and live. It was a sign of grace lifted high in the middle of judgment. A promise of life for all who looked up. They looked and they lived. The healing was as immediate as the faith. The desert was once again a place where God's mercy triumphed over rebellion, preparing the people for the battles to come. The wandering was nearing its end. A new generation had risen, warriors born in the desert and tempered by the sun. They were no longer running from Egypt. They were finally marching toward their home. The kings of the land were terrified. Balak, the king of Moab, hired a mysterious seer named Balaam to curse the people. He wanted to destroy with words what he feared he could not defeat with swords. But God took hold of the prophet's tongue. Every time he opened his mouth to curse, a blessing came out. He looked at the tents of Israel and saw a masterpiece of God's favor. Moses knew his time was done. Before the final crossing, he laid his hands on Joshua, passing the mantle of leadership to the man who had been his shadow, ensuring the vision would live on. For his final act, Moses preached. He recounted the laws, the failures, and the mercies of their journey. He set before them life and death, begging them with his final breaths to choose life. Then Moses climbed Mount Nebo alone, leaving behind the people he had carried for 40 years. He was going to meet his God for the last time. Finishing the journey, he began at a burning bush. His eyes were not weak, nor was his strength gone. He climbed with the vigor of a man whose mission was finished. He was 120 years old, yet his spirit was as bright as the sun. At the top of Pisgah, the Lord spoke to him. It was the final conversation of a long and faithful friendship. God was about to show his servant the fulfillment of the promise made to their ancestors. The Lord showed him all the land, from Gilead to Dan, all the territory of Ephraim and Judah as far as the sea. He saw the palms of Jericho and the valleys his people would soon call home. There was no bitterness in his heart, only peace. As he looked at the land he would never enter, he felt the contentment of a servant who had done his duty. Now he could finally rest. And there, Moses, the servant of the Lord, died. He passed away in the embrace of the mountain, surrendering his spirit to the one who had called him from the burning bush so long ago. The Lord buried him in Moab, in a valley hidden by thick clouds. To this day, no one knows where his grave is, for his resting place was prepared by hands not made of flesh. The Israelites grieved for Moses for 30 days. They mourned the man who had been their father, their judge, and their friend. He was the one who had stood in the gap for them, time and again. But the spirit of Moses lived on. Joshua was filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him. The people listened to him, ready to move from mourning into action. The time of wandering was over. The lessons of the desert had been learned. A nation of slaves had become a nation of priests, and they were finally ready to step into the rest promised. Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. He was the prince who became a shepherd, and the shepherd who became a legend. Our journey is just beginning. Education became the heartbeat of the camp. Moses commanded the parents to teach the laws to their children, at home and along the road. The desert was their classroom, and the word was their inheritance. They were a people of beauty. The skills learned in Egypt were now used to honor their own king. Every thread and every pattern was a statement. They were no longer slaves, but artisans of the Almighty. Caleb was a living legend. At 80, he was as strong as the day he first scouted the land. He didn't just tell the young men about giants. He showed them how to stand tall against them. Caleb and Joshua shared a bond forged in the shadow of giants. They were the bridge between the miracles of the past and the battles of the future, two old lions ready for one last hunt. They learned to celebrate. Even in the wilderness, they held feasts to remember the Lord's provision. The desert was a place of scarcity, but at the Lord's table, there was always enough to sing about. Security didn't come from walls, but from the fire. Every night, the presence of God stood watch, a silent, glowing sentinel that assured them, The shepherd of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Moses was delegating the weight of the nation. He had raised a council of wise men to handle the needs of the people. The nation was maturing, moving from a family to a government. These children would be the ones to play in the streets of Jerusalem and plant the vineyards of Samaria. They were the pure seed, born in freedom, destined to walk on the soil of the promise. Every day the past was buried so the future could be born. It was a pruning of the old branches so the new vine could flourish. Moses watched his peers depart, becoming the last living bridge to their story. He was writing it all down: the beginning, the fall, the promise, and the journey. He knew that leaders die, but the word lives forever. He was anchoring their identity in a story never to be forgotten. One final count was taken. They were no longer the disorganized multitude that fled Egypt. They were an army of 600,000 men of war, a nation structured and ready for its inheritance. Moses began to speak the future over the tribes. To Judah, he gave the blessing of leadership and strength, seeing the kings and the lion that would one day come from this royal line. For the descendants of Joseph, he prayed for the finest gifts of the earth. He saw a future of fruitfulness and abundance for the family that had once saved the nation from famine. He saw their future by the sea and the hidden treasures of the sand. He blessed the merchants and the scholars, seeing a nation that would touch the earth with their wisdom and trade. They were marking their history. Every stone and every name was a testament to the fact that they survived the waste. They were building a legacy that would outlast the desert sands. In the quiet of the tabernacle, Moses gave Joshua the final charge. "Be strong and courageous," he whispered. He was handing over the sacred trust, the presence that would lead them across the river. On their last night in the plains of Moab, the nation felt like one family. The divisions of the past were gone. They were a people unified by a shared journey and a single hope. He looked at the face of a man who had seen the glory of God. He had been a prince and a shepherd, but as he looked at himself for the last time, he knew he was simply a servant. He walked through the lines of his people like a father saying goodbye. He left them with a smile, not a lecture. He had given them everything he had, and now he was going to receive his reward. The call came. It was time to go up. He turned his back on the world he knew and stepped toward the presence he had always longed for. The final ascent had begun. Before his strength left him, God opened a window into the ages. Moses saw the story of his people unfolding across 1,000 years. He saw the triumphs, the tears, and the ultimate hope. He saw the tabernacle of the desert become a temple of stone. He saw a city set on a hill, a light to the nations, where the songs of Zion would echo through the valleys. He saw a shepherd king after God's own heart. He saw the line of Judah rising to take the scepter, transforming the tribes into an empire of praise. The staff he carried would become a scepter, but the vision also grew dark. He saw the years of rebellion and the long, bitter walk into exile. He felt the pain of his people losing the land he had died to bring them to. He saw the mercy of the return. He saw that God would never leave them, even in their failure. The desert would bloom again, and the waste places would be rebuilt. The promise was stronger than sin. Then he saw the one he had truly been waiting for. He saw a prophet greater than himself, the one who would lead a final exodus from death. Moses saw himself greeting his king. The vision was enough. He saw that the story was safe in God's hands. He closed his eyes to the earth and opened them to the face he had longed for since the burning bush. He was buried in the secret of God's presence. No man-made tomb could hold the one who had walked through fire. He was hidden in the valley, a treasure kept by the Lord. The mourning was over. The era of the shepherd had ended, and the era of the conqueror had begun. Moses was gone, but his God remained, ready to lead them across the Jordan. Moses was the prince who became a slave, the slave who became a shepherd, and the shepherd who became a legend. He proved that with God, even a desert can become a kingdom. Moses' journey has ended, but the story of God's faithfulness continues through you. Every desert has an end, and every promise has a fulfillment. If this journey has touched your heart, join our community. Subscribe to Living Word Afrotales and hit the notification bell. Let's explore the heritage of our faith together, one vibrant story at a time. We want to hear from you. Which part of Moses' life spoke to your situation today? Was it the burning bush, the Red Sea, or the view from the mountain? Share your thoughts below. Don't let the inspiration stop here. Click the video on your screen to dive into our next epic tale. There are so many more stories of courage and color waiting for you. Thank you for watching. Remember, you are seen, you are loved, and your story is held in the faithful hands of God. God bless you, and we'll see you in the next story.